Hello everyone, Gloomhaven Journal Supplementary. We're doing something a little bit different. I thought I'd read some details from the Town Records book. We're a fair way into our campaign and a bunch of shit has happened in the Town Records book, and I feel like I should get you guys up to speed. Apologies in advance. I'm going to be reading this, so if it doesn't go well, it's your fault for watching the video. So here we go. So firstly, the Town Records book is designed to document the trials and tribulations of the various Gloomhaven adventuring parties. Page 1 is the retired characters, of which we have 2, and the rest of the book I'll begin to read to you like a bedtime story, including voices. So, you want to start some record of all the mercenaries who've moved on from Gloomhaven? A short-bearded man asks with a scowl. Sounds a little arrogant to me, but I'm sure I've got a spare record book around here in the stacks. He puts down his pen into the spine of the book he was inking and steps out from behind the counter at the front of the Town Records building. I'll be back in a bit. Don't steal anything. Who would do that? He gets more than a good scowl before turning and walking towards the back of the building, nearly tripping over his overly long robe multiple times. As he slips behind one of the many shelves of books, your attention shifts to the building itself. The Town Records building is a large, circular structure on the west side of the coin district. Built as a status symbol for the town's wealthy merchants, anyone who actually enters can quickly see that the massive library is woefully understocked. Some sections, such as the teachings and philosophies of the Great Oak, are reasonably full, but others have just a handful of books, accompanying long barren shelves. Perhaps this is why some of your merchant friends were so adamant about you taking a trip to the Town Records building in the first place. Recording your party's exploits creates more content to fill up these empty halls. With this in mind, your thoughts turn to the open book directly in front of you, the one the clerk was working on. There are 2 texts on the counter, and it looks as if the clerk was in the process of transcribing the writing of one into the other. Looking more closely, however, you notice the titles are different. The complete book is titled The Rise of Human Civilization, while the other is titled The History of Gloomhaven by Dominic Scrim. Intrigued, you begin to read what he has been writing. At some point thousands of years ago, humans stopped hiding in caves and began to form societies out in the open, erecting modest farming villages that eventually grew into the massive sprawling cities we see today. Living out in the open was never easy, though. There were wars, both amongst themselves and with other races, such as the Valras to the south. More troubling, however, were the constant raids from the more barbaric races of the world, Inox and Vermling tribes who have no concept of peace and wanted only to kill and destroy. Walls were always necessary, as were the armed men who guarded those walls. For this reason, the civilization of man grew and developed under a militaristic rule. Those skilled in warfare held the highest positions in society and governed from a perspective of keeping their charges safe from outside attacks. While this regime of strength kept the human race alive and functioning, it did stagnate the growth of other cultural facets of society. What the civilization lacked in culture, though, it made up for in rapid expansion and settlements spreading out from the north to every corner of the continent. This created a strong foothold to ensure that humans would continue to prosper and never again have to go back to hiding in caves. Best to start at the beginning, eh? Dominic now stands before you with a small amount of leather-bound parchment, the best type of parchment. I found this in the back, and it should do well for your purposes, including my voice, but I see you've found something as well. He shifts his feet a bit and hands you the parchment. Most people see Gloomhaven as some backwards caravan stop, he says in an accusatory tone. A necessary evil in the middle of a deadly wilderness. But I disagree. I love Gloomhaven, and I believe its history needs to be documented. I think this town plays a far more important role in the history of this continent than anyone realizes, and I'm going to prove it. Dominic flashes a brief nervous smile and then grabs up the 2 books on the counter. But it's not finished yet. Not by a long shot. Come back later, and I might have more history to share. Thus concludes chapter 1. That the deal is some shit happened, and we don't get to continue reading to a prosperity level 3. So we're there. I'm just going to keep going. Just imagine some time has passed. Some prosperous things have occurred. You walk into the town records building and immediately struck by how different it looks. It might just be the lighting, but there seems to be more books on the shelves and less of a scowl on Dominic's face. The short bearded man approaches you. Ah, how good of you to come, he says. No doubt to record the further exploits of your friends. I was most assuredly derisive of your motives when you had walked in here, but I must say that the idea has grown on me a little. Dominic slaps you on the back and then wanders around behind the counter. Whether you like it or not, you are becoming important fixtures of this community, and I am sure that I have you to thank, at least in some small way, for the increased number of books lining the shelves. He waves his arms about, his hands barely visible beneath his robe's long sleeves. They're not good books, mind you, but they're books nonetheless. Plus, he says with a smile, I've had more time to work on my own tome. Dominic opens the small collection of parchment he has been working on and passes it to you. I'm still focused on the big picture right now, but I should have more soon. I thought you might be interested in taking a look. Though human expansion has not always greeted with kindness and civility by the other races, currently humans are more or less at peace with the other neighbours. After a costly peace treaty with the Valras to the south and an understanding with the prominent Inox tribes, bastards, the only main threats are the animalistic vermlings who continue to assault human cities, sometimes for no discernible reason. Humans have stayed away from Harrower territory out of fear, and the Harrowers seem to return the favour. The same goes for the Savas, who live underground in the largely uninhabitable mountains regions to the north. Orchids and quattrels both come from far-off continents across the sea and seem far more interested in commerce and cultural exchange than conquest. And so human society has certainly benefited culturally from its interaction with other races. Many of the most beautiful structures in human civilizations would not be possible without the machinery of the quattrels, the elemental masteries of the Savas, and the architectural designs of the Valraths. The meditative orchids have even influenced a number of human religions through the followers of the Great Oak, a stringent group who believes the giant tree housed in the center of the capital watches over and protects everyone remains unchanged. And while the human military keeps civilization alive, it is really the commerce with the other races that ultimately allows civilization to flourish. It seems then, as the wilds grew tamer, that a paradigm shift away from militaristic rule and towards a mercantile rule was only a matter of time. Like I said, I'm still working on the broader strokes, Dominic says, but my research has been providing some interesting information. It's all very vague at the moment, though. I need to find better sources, not just Savas howling poems. He takes the book back and frowns. Savas write the worst poetry and is incredibly hard to translate. Stop reading until Gloomhaven has reached prosperity level 4. Time passes. I hope we understand each other, Master Scrim. A well-decorated soldier stands in the center of the town records building as you enter. The librarian, Dominic, seems rather small by comparison, but he is not at all intimidated. Oh, I understand you perfectly well, Dominic says. But I don't think you're understanding my position. I'm trying to find the truth. The soldier looks up at you as you approach and then back down to the bearded man. Just think about what I said. He begins to gesture around him as he walks towards the door. I'd hate to have to tear down this whole place. Dominic waves at you grimly. Hey there, glad to see you stop by. Who knows what sort of short-sighted, lowbrow lengths this thug would have gone through to get his point across. He shakes his head and fluffs his beard. It's just a difference of opinion, though. In my research, I've apparently asked the wrong people the wrong questions. It's amazing how reactionary, thick-skulled people can get about what is written down on a piece of parchment. It's not like anyone's going to even read this little text of mine, Dominic coughs. Well, of course you. Except you, of course. Is that why you've come by? I've finished up the broad history if you wanted to take a look. I'd love to. As human civilizations expanded across the continent, two major changes occurred. The first is that merchants grew into prominent positions within the cities due to wealth gained from lucrative trade routes, both within human civilization and with the other races. The second change was that of the wilds, which were once so dangerous have become much less so, especially in the centre of the continent, as areas were converted to farmland and peace was made with the surrounding races in one way or the other. The military taxed the trade heavily across the continent, and the merchants grew more and more resentful as larger portions of their earnings were demanded for less justification. The military did nothing and grew fat off the work of others. This all came to a head in the capital when the leader of the Merchants Guild, Simon Wainwright, organised a coup of the city's military by hiring an entire army of mercenaries with the guild's money and taking control of the city keep. This seems familiar. With very little force was actually required, as the city guard was outnumbered and woefully undertrained. The siege of the keep lasted less than 2 days, not nearly enough time for reinforcements to arrive from the surrounding cities. Once in power, the Merchants Guild quickly won the favour of the citizenry with sweeping social changes, allowing a great many freedoms and relieving them from the heavy taxation of the military. Once the commoners were on the side of the merchants, there was little hope for the military in regaining control, at which point the mercenary army was no longer required and the military was offered a decent salary to continue keeping watch over the city. After the capital was reformed, the merchants' revolution spread outwards from there, quickly disposing the militaristic rule across the continent. As of the writing of this document, only one city remains under the governance of a military presence, Gloomhaven. Next, I want to get into the development of Gloomhaven and this clash between the merchants and the military in the city, Dominic begins. But as you can see, the military isn't all that happy about it. Dominic hesitates. I was hoping you could do me a favour, actually. In order to continue to put my pen to paper, I think I'd better get the backing of a powerful merchant to keep me safe. They're all sympathetic to me getting down this history, of course, but they're all a little hesitant to publicly support the venture. I'm hoping you can do some convincing for me. You might have the most luck with the Councilman Greymare. Unlock scenario. The Oozing Grove. Stop reading until the Oozing Grove has been completed. This is where we will finish the readings until we complete the Oozing Grove, or sometime in the future. Thank you for tolerating this video. Until then.